Agent Daniel Miller had been with the Foundation for 8 years before he encountered SCP-5120. That morning started like any other Wednesday in Site-19. Stale coffee, incident reports, and the perpetual hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He was reviewing containment procedures for a relatively benign spatial anomaly in Sector 7 when his pager buzzed. The message was terse, as they always were. Report to Director Castellan. Priority 1. Bring field kit. 20 minutes later, Miller stood in the director's office, field jacket already on, go bag at his feet. Director Castellan looked tired. The woman hadn't looked anything but tired in the 3 years Miller had known her. "We have a situation at Union Station," she said, sliding a manila folder across her desk. "Civilian reports of a subway train on the red line that shouldn't exist. Passengers board, train departs on schedule, but it never arrives at the next station. Transit Authority checked their systems. No ghost trains, no maintenance vehicles. Whatever it is, it's not theirs." Miller opened the folder, witness statements mostly, confused transit workers, a few grainy security photos showing a standard subway car, nothing obviously anomalous. Could be a spatial displacement, pocket dimension. "That was our first thought. We sent Agent Torres in 2 hours ago. She boarded the train at Union Station." Castellan paused, her fingers drumming once against the desk. "She hasn't reported back. Her tracker went dark at approximately 0745. Miller felt his stomach tighten. Torres was good. "Careful. You want me to go in after her. I want you to figure out what we're dealing with. Mobile Task Force Epsilon 6 is on standby, but I need eyes on the ground first. Intelligence before force." Castellan's gaze was steady. "Standard protocols. If you can extract Torres safely, do it. If not, get out and report back. We can't afford to lose 2 agents to an unknown anomaly." The folder contained everything the Foundation had compiled in the past 3 hours, not much. The anomalous train appeared to run on a fixed schedule, arriving at Union Station every 90 minutes. Passengers who boarded were never seen again. The Transit Authority had tried to flag the train, stop it from picking up civilians, but their override codes didn't work. The train operated independently of their systems entirely. Miller memorized the details during the car ride to Union Station. His driver, a junior researcher named Park, kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, but didn't speak. They both knew the statistics. Agents investigating unknown spatial anomalies had a 38% non-return rate. Union Station's platform had been cleared. Foundation personnel in Transit Authority uniforms kept civilians away with a story about gas leak inspections. Miller recognized a few faces from Site-19. Dr. Reeves stood near the platform edge, monitoring equipment that looked like standard electromagnetic scanners, but almost certainly wasn't. "Agent Miller." Reeves didn't look up from his tablet. "The train should arrive in approximately 4 minutes. We're reading temporal distortions, which is unusual. Whatever this is, it's not just spatial." "Temporal?" Miller checked his watch, an old mechanical Seiko his father had given him. The Foundation insisted on mechanical watches for field work. Digital devices had a tendency to malfunction around certain anomalies. "How significant? Difficult to say. The readings are subtle but consistent. Nothing like the temporal displacement we've seen with SCP-1876, or the localized time dilation around SCP-3007. This is something different." Reeves finally looked up, his expression unreadable behind thick-framed glasses. Agent Torres's tracker showed similar readings before it went offline. The temporal signature increased exponentially after the train departed the station. Miller descended the stairs to the platform level. The station was eerily quiet without the usual crowds. His footsteps echoed off tile walls covered in advertising posters, a movie he'd seen last month, a smartphone he didn't recognize, a concert that had already happened. Normal things, mundane things. He tried to find comfort in that. His earpiece crackled. "Agent Miller, this is Command, confirming you're equipped with tracker beacon, emergency transponder, and standard field kit. Acknowledge." "Confirmed," Miller said quietly. The field kit included basics: flashlight, multi-tool, first aid supplies, emergency rations, a Foundation-issue sidearm loaded with specialized ammunition effective against most corporeal entities, and a dead man's switch that would trigger an automatic extraction alert if his vital signs flatted. None of it made him feel particularly safe. A distant rumble echoed through the tunnel. Miller felt it in his chest before he heard it, a low vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. The other agents on the platform tensed. Dr. Reeves's equipment began chirping frantically. "Temporal readings spiking," Reeves announced, his voice tight. "Whatever it is, it's coming." The train emerged from the tunnel like something from a dream. At first glance, it looked normal. A standard subway car, silver exterior marked with the Transit Authority's logo, windows revealing rows of seats and hanging straps inside. But something was wrong. The light inside was slightly off, the color temperature not quite matching the fluorescent glare of the station. And it was quiet, too quiet. Modern subway trains squealed and rattled. This one glided into the station with barely a whisper. The doors opened with a soft pneumatic hiss. Miller approached slowly, every instinct screaming at him to stay back. The interior looked clean, well-maintained. Seats upholstered in blue fabric, stainless steel poles, LED advertisement screens mounted above the windows, currently displaying a commercial for some kind of energy drink. A few passengers were already inside, seated at irregular intervals. They didn't look at him, didn't look at anything, really. They stared into space with the glazed expression of commuters lost in their own thoughts. He counted 6 passengers. None of them were tourists. "Going in," Miller said quietly. He stepped through the doors. The temperature inside was comfortable, climate-controlled. The air smelled faintly of cleaning solution and something else he couldn't identify. Something metallic, almost like ozone. Miller moved down the center aisle, hand resting casually near his sidearm. The passengers didn't react to his presence. A woman in business attire, maybe 35, stared at her smartphone. A teenager with headphones bobbed his head to music Miller couldn't hear. An elderly man in a gray suit clutched a briefcase on his lap. No tourists. Miller reached the far end of the car and tried the door leading to the next section. Locked. He could see through the window into the next car. Empty. He turned back, intending to search more thoroughly, when the doors hissed shut. "Miller, report." Director Castellan's voice in his ear. "Do you have eyes on Torres?" "Negative. 6 civilians in the car, no sign of our agent. I'm going to..." The train lurched forward. Miller grabbed a pole for balance. Through the windows, the platform slid away faster than any normal subway acceleration. The Foundation personnel scrambled, Reeves shouting something Miller couldn't hear. Then the station was gone, swallowed by the tunnel's darkness. "Command, the train is moving. I repeat, the train is in motion. I did not locate Torres before departure." Miller kept his voice level despite his racing pulse, attempting to access other cars. Static hissed in his earpiece. Castellan's response came through broken and distorted. "Miller, readings are temporal displacement increasing. Can you..." Then nothing. Dead air. Miller checked his tracker beacon. The indicator light was green, but he had no way of knowing if the signal was actually transmitting. He was on his own. The train continued to accelerate, the darkness outside absolute. No tunnel lights, no stations, just endless black pressing against the windows. Miller turned his attention to the other passengers. The woman with the smartphone was frowning now, tapping her screen. The teenager had removed his headphones, looking around with growing confusion. "Excuse me," Miller said, approaching the woman. "Did you see which station this train departed from?" She looked up, irritation flickering across her face before settling into uncertainty. "Union Station. Obviously. But we should have reached Federal Plaza by now. This is taking too long." Miller glanced at his watch. They'd been moving for 90 seconds. She was right. Federal Plaza was less than a minute from Union Station. He moved to the window, pressing his face against the glass, trying to see anything in the darkness. Nothing. The reflection of the car's interior stared back at him. And in that reflection, he noticed something odd. The LED advertisement screens had changed. Before, they'd been showing an energy drink commercial. Bright colors, modern graphics, the kind of slick production you saw everywhere these days. Now the screens displayed something different. Still an energy drink, but the branding was older. The graphics were simpler, more primitive, the kind of advertisement he remembered from maybe 10 years ago. Miller turned to look at the screens directly. The commercial shifted again as he watched, the image flickering for just a moment. When it stabilized, the advertisement was even older. Early 2000s, he guessed. The logo design, the font choices, even the clothes worn by the models in the ad. Everything screamed early 2000s. "What the hell?" the teenager muttered. He was staring at his phone, pressing buttons frantically. "My phone just died, it was at 80%. The woman checked her own device. "Mine too. What is this, some kind of tunnel interference?" Miller's mechanical watch continued ticking steadily. 8:42 a.m. They'd been moving for 3 minutes now, far too long for any normal subway journey. He tried his earpiece again. "Command, this is Miller. Do you read?" Nothing but static. The train began to slow. Everyone in the car tensed. The teenager stood up, moving toward the doors. The elderly man with the briefcase gripped it tighter. Miller positioned himself near the center of the car, ready for anything. Through the windows, lights appeared. A station platform materialized out of the darkness. But something was wrong. The station looked different, older. The tilework was the same, the basic architecture unchanged, but the details were off. The advertisements on the walls were wrong. Posters instead of digital screens. Movies he recognized from years ago, products that didn't exist anymore. The train stopped. The doors opened. Nobody moved. Miller stared at the platform. It was empty, completely deserted. No Foundation personnel, no civilians. The lights flickered occasionally, casting unstable shadows. A poster on the wall advertised a movie from 2008. He remembered seeing it in theaters. "This isn't Federal Plaza," the woman said. Her voice had gone quiet, uncertain. "This isn't any station I recognize." "Look at the signs," someone else said. A middle-aged man Miller hadn't noticed before, sitting near the back. "Look at the dates." Miller followed his gaze. A notice board on the platform displayed transit schedules and announcements. The dates were clearly visible. September 2009. "That's not possible," the teenager said. This is some kind of joke, right? Some kind of prank?" The doors remained open, waiting. Miller approached cautiously, stopping just at the threshold. He could step out onto the platform, walk away from this. But Taurus was still missing, and something told him that leaving the train wouldn't solve anything. This wasn't a normal station. This was somewhere else, someone else. "We should get off," the woman said. "This is wrong. Something is very wrong." "I don't think that's a good idea," Miller replied. He was thinking about the temporal readings Reeves had mentioned, the increasing displacement. If the train was somehow moving backward through time, then stepping off here would mean being stranded in 2009. Assuming this even was 2009. Assuming any of this was real. The elderly man stood up suddenly. "I'm getting off." His voice shook. "I don't know what this is, but I'm not staying on this train." "Sir, I really think." But the man was already moving, shuffling toward the doors with surprising speed. He stepped onto the platform, briefcase clutched to his chest. The moment his feet touched the concrete, he turned back to look at the others. "It's fine," he called out. "It's just a platform. Come on, we need to report this to..." The doors closed. The old man's eyes went wide. He rushed forward, pounding on the glass. "Wait! Don't leave me here! Wait!" The train began to move. Miller watched the man run alongside the car, his face twisted in panic, mouth open in shouts that couldn't penetrate the glass. Then the platform ended, and the darkness swallowed him. "Jesus Christ," the woman whispered. "Jesus Christ, we just left him there." "He made his choice," the middle-aged man said, but his voice lacked conviction. The train accelerated back into the void. Miller checked his watch. 8:46 a.m. Still ticking, still keeping time. But what time? He looked at the advertisement screens again. They had changed once more. The imagery was even more dated now. Late 90s, he thought. The video quality was worse, the production values lower, and the screens themselves looked different, less like modern LED displays and more like the older LCD screens he remembered from his childhood. "My name is Agent Daniel Miller," he said, projecting his voice to reach everyone in the car. "I work for a government organization that investigates unusual phenomena. This train is an anomaly. I need everyone to stay calm and remain in your seats." "Government?" The teenager laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "What kind of government organization? What the hell is happening? I don't have all the answers yet, but I believe the train is experiencing some kind of temporal displacement, moving backward through time. The station we just passed was from 2009. The next station will likely be even earlier. That's insane. The woman said, time travel isn't real. This has to be, I don't know, some kind of gas leak. We're hallucinating. Miller wished he could believe that. Gas leaks would be easy. Gas leaks could be fixed. Watch the advertisements, he said instead. Watch how they change. The screens flickered. When they stabilized, the change was obvious. The commercial now playing was from the mid-90s. Miller recognized the style immediately, the particular aesthetic of that era. Low-resolution video, bright, garish colors, a jingle he vaguely remembered from Saturday morning cartoons when he was a kid. The woman stared at the screens, her face pale. No, this isn't possible. Count the passengers, the middle-aged man said suddenly. His voice was strained. Count how many of us there are. Miller had already counted. When he boarded, there were 6 passengers. The old man had left, making 5. But now, looking around the car, he could only see 4 other people. The woman, the teenager, the middle-aged man, and a young woman near the front he hadn't noticed before, wearing clothes that looked distinctly dated. Early 90s, maybe. Where's the guy in the blue jacket? The teenager asked. There was a guy in a blue jacket sitting right there. The seat was empty. No sign anyone had ever occupied it. He was born in 2009, the middle-aged man said quietly. I heard him talking on his phone before they died. He said something about his 21st birthday being next month, September 2009. He would have been born in 1988. Miller felt ice crawl down his spine. What are you saying? The station. We passed through September 2009, and he disappeared. The man's hands were shaking. The train isn't just moving through time, it's erasing people. When we pass their birth year, they cease to exist. That's insane, the woman repeated, but her voice was weak. Is it? The man looked at Miller. You said this was a temporal anomaly. You work for some government organization that investigates impossible things. Tell me I'm wrong. Miller couldn't. The theory made horrible sense. Taurus had disappeared. The man in the blue jacket had disappeared, both gone when the train passed a specific point in time. He thought about the old man who'd gotten off at the 2009 station. Had he survived, or had something worse happened to him? The train began to slow again. How old are you? Miller asked the middle-aged man. When were you born? 1979, March. The man's voice was steady now, resigned. You? 1986, June. The woman spoke up, barely above a whisper. 1991, December. The teenager didn't answer. His eyes were wide, fixed on the darkness outside the windows. Miller moved to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. Hey, when's your birthday? May 2001. The kid looked up at Miller. I'm only 22. I'm only 22 years old. The station appeared, lights in the darkness growing brighter. Miller pressed his face to the window, trying to read the date boards. The platform was empty again, deserted, but the advertisements were clearly visible. Movie posters from the early 90s. A poster for a band he remembered his parents listening to. And there, on a transit schedule board, the date, April 1993. 1993, the woman breathed. Oh God, I was only 1 year old in 1993. The train stopped, the doors opened. Miller grabbed her arm as she stood. Don't get off. I have to. If we pass my birth year, I'll disappear. I'll be erased. You don't know that. We don't know how this works. That man disappeared, the one in the blue jacket. We all saw it. She was crying now, pulling against his grip. I have to get off. I have to. The teenager stood up. I'm getting off too. I've got years before my birth. I can find help. You'll be stranded in 1993, Miller said. Assuming this is even real 1993. Assuming you don't just cease to exist the moment you leave the train. The young woman near the front, the one wearing dated clothes, turned to look at them. Her face was blank, expressionless. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from very far away. You cannot leave. The doors are not exits. They are invitations to nowhere. Everyone froze. The woman's appearance was changing as Miller watched. Her clothes were shifting, becoming more translucent. Her features were fading, becoming indistinct. What year were you born? Miller asked her. 1993, April, today. The woman smiled, but it wasn't really a smile, more like a memory of one. I was born today, 30 years ago, and now I am being unborn. She flickered once like a bad television signal, then she was gone. The seat where she'd been sitting was empty, the doors closed. The train began to move. The remaining woman collapsed back into her seat, sobbing. The teenager stood frozen in the aisle, his face ashen. The middle-aged man had his head in his hands. Miller checked his watch. 8:51 a.m. 5 minutes since he'd last checked, but how much time had actually passed? How far back had they traveled? The train was accelerating faster than before. The darkness outside seemed to press against the windows with physical force. Agent Miller. The middle-aged man looked up. You said you were looking for someone. Another agent, Taurus. Yes, she boarded the train 2 hours ago. Real-world time. She never came back. When was she born? Miller thought about Taurus's personnel file. He'd reviewed it dozens of times, working with her on various assignments. 1985, November. We've already passed that. November 1985. The man's voice was gentle, sympathetic. She's gone. She was erased before you even boarded. The implication hit Miller like a physical blow. Taurus had been investigating the train, trying to understand it. She'd ridden it backward through time until the train passed November 1985, and then she'd simply ceased to exist. No body, no remains, just erased from reality, as if she'd never been born. And the same thing was going to happen to everyone in this car unless they found a way to stop it. The advertisements, Miller said suddenly. They're still changing. What are they showing now? The screens had continued their regression. The commercial currently playing was distinctly late 80s. Primitive computer graphics, a product Miller vaguely remembered his parents using. The video quality was terrible by modern standards, but it had been cutting-edge technology once. How fast is it moving? The teenager asked. How much time are we jumping with each station? The first station was 2009. The second was 1993. That's 16 years. Miller did the math. If it maintains that rate, the next station will be 1977, then 1961, then 1945. We'll all be gone long before then, the woman said. Her voice was hollow. I've got 2 more stations at most. You've got maybe 3 or 4. Then we'll all be erased. The middle-aged man stood up. There has to be a way to stop it. An emergency brake, something. Miller had already been looking. The car was remarkably featureless. No obvious controls, no emergency equipment beyond a small fire extinguisher and a first aid kit. The windows were reinforced, impossible to break with anything he had in his field kit. The doors connecting to other cars were locked, and through the windows he could see that the adjacent cars were empty. My equipment, Miller said, pulling out his Foundation issue tablet. The screen was dark. He pressed the power button. Nothing. Dead. Just like your phones. Everything electronic is failing, the middle-aged man observed. Going backward in time, maybe the technology from the future just stops working? Then why is the train still operating? The teenager asked. It's got to have electronic systems. Maybe it's not really a train, the woman said quietly. Maybe it's something else, something pretending to be a train. Miller thought about the SCP objects he'd encountered over the years, entities that mimicked familiar objects, spaces that looked normal but operated under alien physics. The Foundation had documented thousands of anomalies that defied conventional understanding. This could be anything: a temporal rift, a predatory entity, a pocket dimension shaped like a subway car, slowly digesting its passengers by erasing them from history. The train began to slow. Not again, the teenager whispered. Please, not again. The station materialized. Miller recognized the aesthetic immediately. Late 70s. The posters on the walls advertised movies from his parents' generation. The fashion was unmistakable. And there on the date board, confirmation, June 1977. That's your birth year, the woman said to Miller. June 1977. If the train passes June, you'll be erased. We're not there yet. It's only June. I was born on the 15th. The doors opened. The platform was different this time, not empty. There were people there, or things that looked like people. They stood motionless, watching the train. Their faces were indistinct, features blurred as if seen through frosted glass. They wore clothes from the era, but the colors were wrong, faded, washed out. Who are they? The teenager asked. The unmade, the middle-aged man said. The people who were erased. This is where they go. One of the figures stepped forward. It raised a hand, not quite waving. The gesture was mechanical, inhuman. Miller felt his skin crawl. The The figure's face seemed to shift, features trying to coalesce into something recognizable. For just a moment, he thought he saw Taurus, her dark hair, her sharp eyes. Then the image dissolved back into indistinct blur. "Taurus," Miller whispered. He moved toward the doors. The middle-aged man grabbed him. "Don't. You can't help her. She's gone." "You don't know that. If she's there, if there's a way to..." "She's not there." "Not really. That's just an echo, a shadow of someone who was erased from time." The man's grip was strong. "You step off this train, you become one of them." The doors closed. The figures on the platform didn't move, didn't react. They simply watched as the train began to move again, pulling away from the station and back into the darkness. Miller slumped against a pole. His watch showed 8:57 a.m. Still ticking. Still keeping time in a place where time had lost all meaning. He thought about Taurus, about the woman he'd worked with for 3 years. She'd been good at her job. Careful. Professional. She'd had a sister in Portland, he remembered, parents in Ohio. What happened to them now? Did they remember her? Or had she been erased so completely that no one even knew she'd existed? The screens were showing commercials from the mid-70s now. The video quality was even worse. The colors oversaturated, the production values minimal. Miller watched them change, marking the train's progress backward through time. Each flicker of the screen meant years passing in reverse, decades of history being rewound. "We need a plan," the teenager said. He'd regained some composure, though his hands still shook. "Sitting here waiting to be erased isn't a plan." "What do you suggest?" the woman asked bitterly. "We can't stop the train. We can't get off. We're trapped." "Agent Miller's organization, the Foundation," he called it. "They'll be looking for him, right? They'll send help." Miller shook his head. "They can't reach us. We're not in normal space anymore. Maybe not even in the same timeline. The temporal displacement." He trailed off, thinking. "Wait, the train has to end somewhere. It can't go backward forever." "Why not?" the middle-aged man asked. "Because time has a beginning, the Big Bang. The train has to stop eventually, or it'll reach a point where nothing exists." Miller stood up, pacing the length of the car. "The entity that created this, whatever it is, it has limits. It has to." "Terminal station," the woman said suddenly. "Look at the route map." Miller followed her gaze. A transit map was mounted on the wall near the front of the car. He'd seen it when he first boarded, but hadn't paid attention. Now, looking closely, he saw that the map showed a single line. No branches, no connections. Just one straight line running from Union Station through a series of stops, each one labeled with a year. And at the end of the line, a final station. Terminal station. The date next to it was blank. "That's where we're headed," the woman said. "The end of the line." Miller studied the map. The years decreased with each station. 2009, 1993, 1977, 1961, 1945, 1929. The pattern wasn't consistent, but there was logic to it. The jumps were getting smaller as they moved further back. And after 1929, the stations came faster. 1913, 1897, 1881. "It's accelerating," the middle-aged man observed. "The closer we get to Terminal Station, the faster we're moving through time." The train began to slow again. "Already?" The teenager checked his phone, even though it was dead. A nervous habit. That was fast. The station appeared. 1961. The platform was crowded with the indistinct figures now. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all standing motionless, all watching. Miller looked away. He couldn't afford to think about them. Couldn't afford to wonder if every person on that platform had once been real, had once had lives and families and futures. The doors opened. The figures didn't move. They just watched. And then the middle-aged man stood up. "What are you doing?" Miller asked. 1961. "I was born in 1979. I've got time." The man moved toward the doors. "I'm going to try something." "Don't. We don't know what will happen. We know what happens if we stay on the train. We all get erased eventually." The man looked at Miller, and his expression was calm, accepting. Better to try something than just wait for the end. He stepped off the train. For a moment, nothing happened. The man stood on the platform, looking around at the figures. They didn't react to his presence. He turned back to face the train, started to speak, and then his expression changed. Confusion. Fear. He looked down at his hands. They were fading, becoming translucent, becoming indistinct. No, the man said. No, I was born in 1979. I shouldn't. But his voice was already distant, already fading. Miller watched in horror as the man dissolved into one of the blurred figures, his features melting away, his individuality erased. In seconds, he was indistinguishable from the others. Just another shadow on the platform. The doors closed. The train moved. "Oh God," the woman sobbed. "Oh God, we're all going to die." "I was born in 2001, the teenager said. His voice was hollow. "I've got time. I've got years before the train reaches 2001. Miller checked the route map again. The stations were accelerating. After 1961 came 1945, then 1929, then 1913. The jumps were irregular but trending faster. At this rate, they'd pass 2001 within the next few stations. "What year were you born?" Miller asked the woman. "You said 1991? She nodded, unable to speak. "Then you've got maybe one more station. When we hit 1945, you'll be gone." "Can't you do something? You're a government agent. You investigate these things. There has to be a way to stop it." Miller wanted to tell her yes. Wanted to tell her the Foundation would save them, that there was a containment procedure for this, that help was coming. But he couldn't lie to her. Not now. "I'm sorry," he said instead. The train began to slow. The woman stood up. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was set, determined. "I'm not going to just sit here and wait. I'm going to try the other cars. Maybe there's a way through. Maybe there's a control room or something. The doors are locked. Then I'll break them." She picked up the fire extinguisher from the wall mount. "I'm not giving up." She swung the extinguisher at the door connecting to the next car. The impact was loud in the confined space, but the glass didn't break. She swung again, and again. The glass was reinforced, designed to withstand impacts. But she kept swinging, kept trying, even as the station appeared outside the windows. 1945. The platform was packed with figures now. A crowd of the unmade, all watching silently. The doors opened. The woman was still swinging at the door, desperate, frantic. Miller moved toward her, intending to pull her away from the doors before she accidentally fell out. But as he reached for her, she stopped, lowered the extinguisher, turned to look at him. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I couldn't." She flickered, once, twice, then she was gone. The fire extinguisher clattered to the floor. Miller stood alone in the aisle, staring at the empty space where she'd been. The teenager was still in his seat, his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. The doors closed. The train moved. 2 passengers left. Miller checked his watch. 9:03 a.m. He'd been on the train for less than half an hour, real time. But they'd traveled backward through decades, through generations. The world outside the train was approaching a point before his parents had been born, before his grandparents had been born. The advertisements had changed again. The screens now showed commercials from the 40s, black and white, grainy film quality, products from another era. The screens themselves looked different, less like modern displays and more like old television sets. The whole car was changing, Miller realized. The materials, the design, everything was regressing to match the time period. The seats were no longer modern blue fabric. They were older now, a different style. The metal poles had lost their stainless steel sheen, becoming duller, more oxidized. The floor was different. The lights were different. The car was transforming around them, becoming something from the past. "Hey kid," Miller said. "What's your name?" The teenager looked up. His eyes were red. James Patterson." "How old are you, James?" 22. "I told you. Born May 2001. The next station is probably going to be 1929 or earlier. You'll make it past that one." "And then what? The one after? I'm going to disappear. I'm going to be erased just like everyone else." James laughed, but it was a broken sound. "I had plans, you know? I was going to grad school. I was going to study engineering. I had a girlfriend. We were talking about moving in together." Miller sat down across from him. "I had a life too, a job I was good at, friends. I was supposed to have dinner with my sister next week. She's pregnant, first kid. I was going to be an uncle." "Was? You mean if you get erased, you were never an uncle because you never existed? That's how I understand it. God." James shook his head. "This is so screwed up. How does this even work? If we're erased from time, doesn't that change everything? Like butterfly effect? Our whole lives, every choice we made, every person we influenced. All of that just vanishes. Miller had been thinking about the same thing. The temporal mechanics were beyond his understanding, but he knew enough to recognize the implications. If he ceased to exist, did that mean every arrest he'd made, every anomaly he'd contained, every report he'd filed was undone? Did the Foundation even know he existed anymore? Or had his erasure from the timeline already propagated forward, rewriting history so that he'd never been born, never joined the Foundation, never boarded this train? I don't know, Miller admitted. Temporal mechanics isn't my specialty. The train began to slow. Here we go again, James said. He sounded tired, resigned. The station appeared. The architecture was different now, older. The platforms were lit by incandescent bulbs instead of fluorescent lights. The advertisements were hand-painted signs, not printed posters. And the date board showed 1929. The platform was completely packed with figures. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a crowd of the unmade stretching back into the darkness. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All the people who'd been erased, all the passengers who'd ridden this train backward through time and reached their birth year. The doors opened. Miller stood, moving to the threshold. He looked out at the mass of figures. Their faces were all blurred, all indistinct, but he had the strange sense that they were looking back at him, watching, waiting. "Torres," he called out. "Agent Torres, if you can hear me, if any part of you is still there, I need you to give me a sign." The figures didn't respond. They simply watched. "I'm sorry," Miller said quietly. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I can't save any of you." The doors closed. The train moved. "That was pointless," James said. "Maybe, but I had to try." The screens were showing commercials from the 20s now. Silent film advertisements, title cards instead of dialogue. The car continued to transform. The seats were older, the materials different. Even the air smelled different. Mustier, like old paper and machine oil. Miller checked the route map again. After 1929 came 1913, then 1897, then 1881. The pattern was accelerating. They were moving through time faster now, each station representing a smaller jump. At this rate, they'd reach Terminal Station within a few more stops. "How far back can it go?" James asked. 1800s? 1700s? All the way back to the beginning? "I don't know, but Terminal Station has to be the end. The map shows it as the final stop." "And what happens there? We just cease to exist? The train reaches a point before anyone was born and we all disappear? Maybe. Or maybe something else happens. Something worse?" Miller didn't answer. He couldn't imagine what could be worse than being erased from existence. But the Foundation had taught him that there were always worse things, always deeper horrors waiting to be discovered. The train began to slow. James stood up. "This is 1913. I'll survive this one, and probably the next few, but eventually," he trailed off. "Eventually, we all run out of time," Miller finished. The station appeared. 1913. The platform was a sea of figures now. The unmade stretched back as far as Miller could see, an army of shadows, all watching the train. The architecture was Victorian, ornate ironwork and decorative tiles, beautiful in its way. A relic of a time when stations were built to impress. The doors opened. Miller expected the figures to just stand there, as they had at every previous station. But this time something changed. The figures moved. Not quickly, not aggressively. They simply began to walk toward the train. Slowly, deliberately. "Close the doors," James said. "Close them now." But the doors didn't close. The figures reached the threshold and stopped, standing just outside the car. Up close, Miller could see more detail. The blur that obscured their features wasn't constant. It shifted, flickered. For brief moments, he could see faces. Young, old, male, female, all different. All the people who'd been erased. One figure stood directly in front of Miller. Its features coalesced for just a moment, and he saw Torres. Her face, her expression. She looked sad. "I'm sorry," Miller whispered again. The figure that had been Torres reached out a hand. Not threatening, almost gentle. Miller felt the urge to take it, to step off the train and join the unmade, to stop fighting, to accept the inevitable. James grabbed his arm. "Don't. Whatever they're doing, don't fall for it." The doors closed. The figures stepped back, reforming their vigil on the platform. The train moved. Miller realized he was shaking. They're not just shadows. They're aware. They know what happened to them. "Are they suffering?" James asked. I don't know. Maybe, or maybe they're beyond suffering, beyond anything. The screens showed turn-of-the-century advertisements now, elaborate Victorian graphics, products Miller had only seen in history books. The car had continued its regression, becoming something from a bygone era. The seats were wooden benches now. The lights were gas lamps, though they still provided illumination through some impossible mechanism. The metal poles had become brass. They were riding a ghost train through history, and with each station they moved closer to Terminal Station, closer to the end. The train began to slow. That was fast, James said. We barely left the last station. Miller checked the map. 1897. The jumps were definitely accelerating, and after 1897 came 1881, then 1865. The train was speeding up, hurtling backward through time faster and faster. The station appeared. 1897. The platform was packed with figures as before, but now they were moving, all of them, walking toward the train in unison, a slow tide of the unmade. The doors opened. The figures didn't stop at the threshold this time. They stepped onto the train. Miller backed away, pulling James with him. The figures entered the car, filling the aisle, surrounding them. Their blurred faces turned toward the two remaining passengers. Miller could feel their attention, heavy and oppressive. They weren't hostile, exactly, but they weren't friendly either. They were something else, something beyond human emotion. "What do they want?" James asked. One figure stepped forward. Its features shifted, and for a moment Miller saw the middle-aged man who'd gotten off at the 1961 station. The man's mouth moved, but no sound came out. He was trying to say something, trying to communicate. Miller watched the man's lips, tried to read the words. It looked like he was saying the same thing over and over. 2 words. "Turn back. Turn back?" Miller repeated. "How? We can't control the train." But the figure was already fading, along with all the others. They dissolved like smoke, disappearing as the doors closed and the train began to move again. "Turn back," James said. "They want us to turn back, to reverse the train's direction. Is that even possible? I don't know. But if we don't figure it out soon, we're both going to end up like them." Miller searched the car frantically. There had to be controls somewhere. A way to stop the train, or reverse it, or do something. The front of the car had a small compartment that might have been a driver's cabin in the original design, but the door was sealed. He tried forcing it, using his multi-tool, but the metal wouldn't budge. "The emergency brake," James said. He was examining a panel on the wall. "Every train has an emergency brake." Miller joined him. The panel was old, the paint faded and chipped. A sign above it read "Emergency Stop" in faded letters. James pulled the lever. Nothing happened. "Of course not," James said bitterly. "That would be too easy." The train began to slow. "No," Miller said. "Not yet. We just left 1897. The next station shouldn't be for another minute at least." But the station was already appearing. 1881. The acceleration was exponential now. They were barely spending any time between stations. The doors opened. The platform was a solid mass of figures, packed so tightly they seemed to merge into a single entity. And they were all moving onto the train, flooding the car, filling every available space. Miller and James were pushed back, surrounded by the unmade. The figures pressed in from all sides, not aggressive but inexorable. Miller could feel their touch, cold and insubstantial, like walking through cobwebs. The doors closed, the train moved, but the figures remained. They filled the car, standing shoulder to shoulder, all of them facing forward, toward the front of the train, toward Terminal Station. "They're coming with us," James whispered. "They're riding the train to the end." Miller understood. The unmade weren't haunting the stations. They were passengers, just like him and James. Passengers who'd already been erased but somehow remained, trapped in this liminal space between existence and non-existence. And they were all heading to Terminal Station together. The screens had stopped showing advertisements. They were blank now, or showing only static. The car had regressed as far as it could go. It looked like something from the mid-1800s, all wood and brass and gaslight, a relic from the earliest days of rail travel. Miller checked his watch. 9:09 a.m., still ticking. He wondered what would happen to the watch when he was erased. Would it continue ticking, or would it vanish with him, having never existed? The train began to slow. "This is it," James said. His voice was surprisingly calm. "This is when I disappear. The next station will be past 2001. "I'm sorry," Miller said. He meant it. James had been brave. They'd only known each other for a short time, but Miller felt genuine sorrow at the thought of losing him. "It's not your fault." James smiled, though his eyes were wet. "Tell you what, if you figure out how to stop this thing, if you somehow make it back, tell my girlfriend I loved her. Tell her I was thinking about her at the end." "I will." The station appeared, but it wasn't like the others. There was no date board, no advertisements, no architectural details from any specific era. The platform was simply empty space, a void illuminated by sourceless light, and at the far end, a doorway, a simple wooden door set into nothingness. Terminal station. The doors opened. James flickered. His features began to blur, to fade. He looked down at his hands as they became translucent. "I'm sorry," he said. Then he was gone. Miller stood alone in a car full of figures. The unmade surrounded him, their blurred faces all turned toward the door at the end of the platform. The doorway to Terminal Station. He checked his watch, 9:10 a.m., and then he checked his birth year, June 1986. He'd been born on June 15th, 1986. The train had passed through 1881. If it continued its acceleration, the next jump would take them past 8665, then 1849, then earlier and earlier. But Terminal Station wasn't a year, it was something else. The end of the line, the point where time itself might cease to have meaning. Miller stepped off the train. The platform felt solid beneath his feet, but it had no texture. It was simply surface, neither warm nor cold. The figures followed him, flowing out of the train like water, forming a crowd around him. They didn't block his path. They simply accompanied him as he walked toward the door. The door was old, hand-carved wood with iron fittings. It looked like something from a medieval castle, not a train station. Miller put his hand on the handle. It was cold, real, the most solid thing he'd felt since boarding the train. He looked back at the train. It sat on the platform, waiting. The car he'd ridden in was barely recognizable now, a primitive thing of wood and brass. But he could see into the other cars now. They were full. Every car packed with figures, thousands of them, tens of thousands. All the people who'd been erased by this train over the years, decades, maybe centuries. And in the distance, past the last car, he could see something else. Another train, identical to the one he'd ridden, empty, waiting, ready to depart for Union Station and begin the cycle again. This was how it worked. The train traveled backward through time, erasing passengers, collecting them. When it reached Terminal Station, it deposited the unmade here and returned to the present to begin again. An endless cycle, a machine that consumed existence itself. Miller turned back to the door. He had a choice. He could open it, see what lay beyond, or he could get back on the train, ride it forward, return to his own time. But would that even work? Could the train go forward? Or was it locked into its backward journey? He thought about Taurus, about James, about the woman and the teenager and the middle-aged man and all the others who'd been erased, about the thousands of figures standing silently around him. "Turn back," the middle-aged man had said. Miller looked at his watch, still ticking, still keeping time, and then he understood. The watch was mechanical. It didn't rely on electricity or digital components. It kept time through pure mechanics, through the steady unwinding of a spring. It had survived the journey backward because it was independent of the timeline's flow, and it could keep time forward too. Miller wound his watch, slowly, deliberately. With each turn of the crown, he focused on moving forward, on time progressing rather than regressing, on existence rather than erasure. The platform shuddered. The figures around him began to move, turning away from the door, turning back toward the train. Miller kept winding, kept focusing. The train's lights flickered. The platform shuddered again, more violently, and then he felt it, the direction reversing, time beginning to flow forward again. Miller ran for the train. The doors were closing. He threw himself through them, landing hard on the wooden floor. The car was empty now. The figures had vanished. He was alone. The train lurched forward, not backward, forward. Through the windows, Miller saw the platform receding. The door to Terminal Station grew smaller, then vanished. The train was accelerating, but this time it felt different. It felt like going home. The screens flickered to life. They showed modern advertisements, LED displays, current products. The seats transformed, becoming blue fabric again. The lights became fluorescent. The car was returning to its modern form. Station after station flashed by. 1865, 1881, 1897. Miller watched the years increase, watched time moving forward. The train was retracing its path, but faster now, as if it were in a hurry to return to the present. 1913, 1929, 1945. Each station was empty. The figures were gone. The unmade had been left behind at Terminal Station. 1961, 1977, 1993. Miller held his breath as they approached 2009. Would the passengers reappear? Would tourists be waiting on the platform? But the stations remained empty. The timeline had changed, or maybe it had never changed at all. Maybe the people who'd been erased had always been erased, their absence woven into the fabric of reality. 2009. The train didn't stop. It continued forward, accelerating, hurtling toward the present. And then, suddenly, Union Station. The platform was full of Foundation personnel. Dr. Reeves stood near the edge, his equipment chirping frantically. Director Castellan was there too, along with armed security teams. The train stopped. The doors opened. Miller stumbled out, nearly falling. Hands grabbed him, steadied him. Someone was asking him questions, but he couldn't process the words. His mind was still in the train, still watching the years roll backward. Agent Miller. Director Castellan's voice cut through the confusion. Report. What happened? Miller looked at his watch. 8:32 a.m. He'd been gone for less than 10 minutes, real time. But he'd traveled through decades, through history, through the accumulated erasures of countless passengers. It's a temporal anomaly, Miller said. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. It travels backward through time. When it passes a passenger's birth year, they're erased from existence. It terminates at a location outside normal time, Terminal Station. I reversed it using mechanical timekeeping. The watch. I used the watch. Castellan studied him for a long moment. Agent Torres? Erased. Born November 1985. The train had already passed that point before I boarded. She's gone. I see. Castellan's expression didn't change, but Miller saw something in her eyes. Sorrow. Resignation. We'll debrief in 1 hour. Medical evaluation first, then you'll write a full report. Miller nodded. He let himself be led away from the platform, away from the train. As they climbed the stairs, he looked back. The train sat on the platform, innocuous, waiting, ready for the next passenger, ready to begin its journey backward through time again. But something was different. The interior was dark, empty. And on the side of the car, barely visible, a new designation had appeared, painted in Foundation standard font. SCP-5120. Contained. Miller closed his eyes. He'd done it. He'd survived. He'd contained the anomaly. But the victory felt hollow. Taurus was gone. James was gone. The woman and the teenager and the middle-aged man and countless others were gone, erased from existence, and nothing he did could bring them back. His watch continued to tick. 8:33 a.m. Time moving forward, always forward. Unless you rode the train to yesterday.